All right. Hey, everybody. So, as we were talking about what we wanted to do our call on, and we were thinking about really loving on our customers, we were thinking about like what gets in the way of us reaching out and loving on our customers. And a lot of times there's some of our own personal limiting like beliefs or blocks around things. And so we just started this conversation opening up about, what keeps us or from doing the things we know we should be doing, and what are some of like the beliefs that we might not even realize that we have, or maybe we do know that we have them, but how do we like overcome them, right? Some of these things are like lifetime or can take a long time, or can just be like this instant, it clicks in your head, right? And that belief totally shifts and changes, and then everything opens up, like all these shifts happen in your life. So we've asked a couple of people that um, are building doTERRA that have had some of these shifts, or some of these, like, I don't know if it's taken them a while or if it was like really quick, but they've had some shifts in their beliefs and it's really changed their business a lot. So I wanted them to share their experience and maybe talk a little bit about what helped them, or whatever you have prepared is awesome. So I'm going to first turn the time over to Lindsay. So Lindsay is a silver in doTERRA, and she has this darling little girl. And she's been, I don't know how long you've been doing doTERRA, a couple years, 2 years, 1 year? 1.5 years?
Yeah, but a couple years is how long I've been doing the business. I got into it after my daughter was born.
Okay, awesome. So tell us a little bit about maybe what your struggle was, and how you overcame that, and whatever you want to share with us, Linz.
Sure. So when I first started using oils, it was about 5 years ago. And for me, one of my big struggles was I struggled with sharing oils with people because I wasn't sure if they were going to work. And the reason why was because when I got started with oils, I I didn't know anything about them, and I almost thought it was a fluke that they were working for me. And so because of that, I didn't have a strong belief that they were going to help people. And so what really changed this for me was I started getting around other people who used the oils. Now, this a couple different ways that I did this, that you can do this. If you're feeling, so for anybody who maybe feels like, I don't know if I want, I don't know if what I have can share or will really help someone. What really helped me was I got involved in the Facebook group, and I started seeing so many people saying, oh my gosh, I used to have this, and now I use this oil and it's no longer an issue for me, or I have something to address it. And that made me go, oh, it's not just me experiencing this. Um, there's so many people that are really seeing true changes. And that gave me the confidence that I needed to go out and start sharing. And so I also feel like if there's any events in your area, go out to where you can meet other people who are using the oils. One of the first big events I went to after I started actually sharing oils was one of the post-convention events. And I went there, and here I was in this room full of hundreds of people who had had this big experience. And I no longer felt like I was alone in, oh, I just, me and a couple people I know have had a good experience. It was like, all of these people, this is really something that's life-changing. So that has been one of the biggest things to me when I first got started to sharing the oils. I was also scared to share the business at first because, again, I hadn't had personal success in it. So I was like, who am I to share it? That's what my thought was when I first started. And what really changed this for me was, again, getting out and meeting people who were in the business, people who were doing doTERRA as a business. So I would go to events, I would go to trainings, and I would talk to them and hear their stories about how much it had changed their life. I would learn about the sustainability of this type of business model. I watched the video, The Rise of the Entrepreneur by Eric Worre, which talks about network marketing. And I started to immerse myself in a new thought, a new way of thinking that I hadn't considered before, or maybe I'd, not thought much of. And I saw that it was truly happening for people, that they were seeing these successes. And having that belief, once I had that belief, this is truly possible. We can change people's health. We can help them with their business, with their any struggles they have financially. We have an answer for those two big things. Why would I not at least offer the opportunity for people to learn more about it? I don't chase them down. I don't make them see it, but I at least offer it to them and give them a chance to change their way of thinking, because it was someone being willing to do that for me that changed my life so much. So maybe by sharing something with someone, I can help change their life too. And so that's what's been the biggest change and shift for me in growing my business.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for sharing that. So a couple things I want to point out if people, I'm sure that you guys all get it, but just that you recognized where you were having limiting beliefs first, which I think is huge. And then two, you went and surrounded yourself with people that you knew would build that up, right?
Mm-hmm.
It helped build up that limiting belief. And I think in this business, there's lots of things that you could struggle with. There's kind of some main things you could struggle with a limiting belief in. So one would be like your belief in the product. For most of us, that's not as big of an issue because a lot of us have had some big thing, right? But I'm right there with you. I remember the first couple times I used them, I was like, that was a fluke. My thoughts and my exact words, that was a fluke. Or you may have had, I know I was talking to somebody else and they had a reaction to one of the oils because they went in the sun, they put orange and then they went in the sun, right? And then they had this reaction and that could have faltered their belief in do oils work because they had some sun reaction with that. Does that make sense? And so maybe that could have faltered their belief in the oils or the product. Instead of them shutting back and saying, oh, these don't work, they're get curious about it, right? Or figure out what went wrong there. So another thing that we could have a limiting belief on is the business, right? Does this business work, or does network marketing work? And there's a whole bunch of, I love listening to podcasts or connecting into and just seeing other people where it does work. And it's nice to be able to come into these kinds of groups and say okay, Brittany's a pretty normal person. There's nothing extraordinary about her, so if she can do this, I can probably do this too, right? I hope you guys get that vibe from me, because nothing extra special about Brittany in terms of there's no big qualities that I have that each of you don't have that could make you do this business as well or better than me. Another thing that we might have that belief or that struggle with is that limiting belief of ourselves. So again, feeling do I have what it takes personally? Yeah, I know that Brittany could do it, or I know that Jeanette can do it. I know that, somebody else can do this business, but do I personally have what it takes? And so some of those, just identifying the limiting beliefs is such a big key part of it to begin with. So I wanted to ask Amy, I just saw that you popped on, and if you're ready, we would love to invite you to share your experience with what one of your limiting beliefs was and how you have shifted that and what helped make that shift. So
is this personally or is this in the business?
Whatever you want to share, Amy.
Okay, so I'm big on mindset. I have been for a very long time because I guess I'm going to go take it more on a personal level because I think that's really where it all begins. So when we're doubting ourselves or we're in a bad relationship, everything kind of mushes together. So we don't have a good mind in anything. It just kind of trickles in everything that we're doing. So a little bit about my negative mindset. This was, 13 years ago? So I was just in a really negative space, a negative relationship, very abusive, verbally, mentally. and it really knocked me down. And there was just this one day that I just had it. I was over it. And I knew that there was something more, something better out there for me, but no one else was going to do it for me. I had to do it for myself. So I picked up this book. It was called The Secret. They have a Christian version of it as well. I've read both. But really reading the first couple pages shifted my mind. And then things just started to unravel beautifully. And just by changing that mindset, and literally, like, I started off small and really silly things away from my relationship, where I would say, time is always on my side. Even when I didn't believe it, I was always rushing. Even to this day, I still use it. And me and my daughter, now she's 12, we kind of have this like little game that we play in the car where I talk out loud and I'm saying, I always get a parking spot in the front. I always get a parking spot in the front, and I always get a parking spot in the front. It's just changing your mind frame, and we just play those games. But it really started, and I knew I deserved better. And repeating that to myself had really just changed that for me. It changed my life, and I continue to use that. And I know that it can work for everyone, but you have to want it for yourself. No one can want it for you. So you got to pick up the pieces and stop saying those negative things. Like, literally start saying the opposite thing even when you don't believe it, because that's going to eliminate those limiting beliefs. And we always are going to have them. They're always going to come up. So we're always working on ourselves to better ourselves, to better our life. So don't think that everyone has it together, because we don't. But, just pick up that book. If something resonated to you in a book, or someone said something, go back to that. So you go back to that mind frame, because sometimes you get knocked off course, and just pick up the pieces again. It's not a big deal. So that's all I got. Is that what you wanted?
That was awesome. Amy, thank you so much for sharing that. I think one of the things that I loved that I want to point out is that Amy makes it into a game. Like, this, get curious about it, make it fun. It's not something to beat yourself up about, that you have, like she said, everybody has a limiting belief, and it's not something to beat yourself up about, right? It's something to say, like, hey, I wonder, like, why that keeps coming up for me. Start being curious about it, and then start saying, how can I shift that? Keep shifting it. So I wanted to share with you guys, we'll just see how far we can get in this, and if we, we'll just see how far we get. Tell me when you guys actually see my screen, and when. I want to make sure. Last week I started screen sharing, and then you guys couldn't see it, like, when I moved the screen. So can you see the screen now?
It's good.
Yay! Okay. So overcoming limiting beliefs. You guys, this is a model that I have been working on and do personally. I have a coach, and this is one of the things that I learned with my coach, and we look at our thought patterns and how they're causing results in our lives. So this is kind of the, I just wanted to share this with you guys, and hopefully it makes an impact for you, but I know it does for me, and being more intentional about my thoughts and things that I think. So the first part of this model, or the very foundation or base of this, and this is in a lot of different books that you read and other things, like Success Principles by Jack Canfield. Like, the very first thing that he says, the very first success principle, is that you have to take 100% responsibility for your life and the way that it is right now. Now, that doesn't mean that it's your fault necessarily, that how your life is your fault, but just try on the fact, or try on the idea of, what if I've created this life that's around me, right? And then you can start to take more responsibility for that. When we take responsibility, we get out of that victim mentality and we can start to change things, as opposed to there's this idea of learned helplessness where we think, I've tried something once, it doesn't work, so I'm not going to keep trying, I can't break through with this. So taking responsibility for things helps empower you to say, oh, I can change things, or I can make a difference. So here's what this model looks like. There's a circumstance that happens, and it has to be something that's just a fact. And it's out of your control, it's just something that happens. So if we take like traffic, it's just something that happens. Maybe you're stuck in traffic. It's there, the cars are surrounding you. There's nothing about that circumstance that's good or bad, it just is. All right, the cars around you just are. I don't know if you can wrap your head around that idea. And then you might have a thought. So the circumstance triggers a thought. Your thought could be good or bad about that traffic, right? So we could just pick a thought that we want to examine about that, or you might have a whole bunch of thoughts around traffic. And that thought, whatever you think, causes a feeling. So feelings are literally like chemicals going off in our body. And our thoughts are creating these little chemical reactions that happen in our body. And in my opinion, there aren't really good feelings or bad feelings. It's okay to feel whatever you're feeling. Sometimes we try to take feelings and like bury them down, or we don't want to feel something. They're chemicals that are going through our body, and if we can just let them go through our body, we can feel those, and then we can move on with that. But recognizing that if you're not liking a feeling that you're feeling, there's a thought behind that feeling. Okay, there's something that's triggered that feeling to come up, and so let's get curious about that thought. And oftentimes, whatever we're feeling, based off what we feel, we take action off of that. So, if we're feeling scared or upset about things, we take action based off of that feeling of scared or upset. And then based off of our actions, we have results. So let's take, I'm going to take just a very neutral thing here. I don't know, does that make sense? Do you guys have questions about that little model? I hope that makes sense. So I'll just briefly go over this part again. So we have a circumstance, it triggers thoughts that create feelings, and our feelings, we do some kind of action with that, and then we have a result that happens with that. So in terms of baby steps to start being curious or looking at our thoughts, it's just helpful to observe or notice what results or feelings are coming up that we do want or that we don't want. And I recommend writing those things down. And you could start even writing down maybe thoughts that come into your head, and there's no judgment that has to come with those thoughts. It can be whatever they are, good or bad. It's just helpful to write those things down. And then we can get curious and we can try on some new thoughts. Like Amy was saying, you can, if you're having a thought that's negative, you can say, I'm going to do the exact opposite. You can have a different thought. And I want you to, I call it try on. So I tell my kids, well, let's just try a different thought. Let's just see how a different thought will make you feel. All right? And then we have to keep redirecting our thoughts. This is a constant, we have to keep redirecting our thoughts until it becomes something that's easy to have happen. So let's just take like a doTERRA business circumstance, all right? So the circumstance might be that you don't have very many people on your team on LRP. So you could even make it more factual by saying, like, I only have 10 out of 100 people on my team on LRP. And that could be the circumstance. All right? Does that make sense how that's just a fact? And your thought could be, well, people can't afford the oils, or another thought could be, people don't like auto ship things, or another thought could be, I'm not very good. Okay, sorry. I'm not very good at explaining LRP. Those could be all of the different thoughts that are going through your head. In the chat, you guys, write down any other thoughts that you might have with this circumstance of I don't have very many people on LRP on my team. Are there any other thoughts that come up with that? I'm not a good leader. Great, thanks, April. They don't know what they need. No, like no one can afford it, right? Like no one can afford auto ship or $100 a month, all those things. So those thoughts can generate or create, they don't want monthly orders, great. So those thoughts, what kind of feelings would those thoughts create? I put like frustration or lack of accomplishment, defeat. They might feel intimidated, discouraged, inadequate. And then if you're feeling discouraged, inadequate, like frustrated, your actions probably aren't going to be these big actions, right? So maybe you aren't going to be too confident when you're sharing LRP, or maybe you just don't even do it at all. You don't even share LRP, right? Or you do it in a very like offhanded, oh, and if you're interested, if you have enough money, right? Like, you kind of sabotage yourself there in your action. And then your result is you have a poor retention rate. So it kind of is this little vicious cycle that you go in. But I just wanted to help you guys see how this might play out in you have a circumstance, triggers a thought, right? And that's the part where we really get to choose. We don't really get to choose our feelings that we have from there. It can trigger a whole bunch of different feelings. And then we still get to choose our action and our results, but oftentimes it's hard to choose a different action when we're feeling a certain way. Okay, so here's how I find a new thought. You might have to try some different thoughts out. I like to do it where a thought is more believable for myself. So if I go all the way from like, I'm not a very good leader to I'm the best leader ever, I might not believe that jump. Does that make sense? So I like to find one that's like maybe in between there. And I'll show you guys in just a second how I do that. But I'm going to try some different thoughts on until there's one that I say, yeah, I could believe that. Instead of saying like, I'm a bad leader, say, I'm a good leader. Once I find a thought that rings true to me, you can write it down. If it's one that you're really struggling with and you're really trying to overcome this thought or this thing that's kind of running through your head, this block, you can put it in your pockets. So maybe you could write down like, people have more than enough money to spend on things that matter to them, right? So that could be a thought. You can carry it around. I put it everywhere, and I then begin to look for evidence of it, right? All the time, people are spending money on all sorts of things. It must matter to them. And then I practice believing those thoughts. All right, so here's where I kind of bridge the gap if I'm really struggling with a thought. I'm working on figuring out how to be a better leader. So if I really believe that I'm not a good leader, if I really thought that about myself, you could bridge that gap by saying, I'm working on figuring out how to be a better leader. Or I'm in the process of getting better at. Does that make sense? There's all sorts of things that you can say to just bridge that gap. I'm still working on being the leader that I want to be, and then I know that I can become. So there's lots of different thoughts that can kind of help bridge that gap. And then you have to keep redirecting it. So Amy, you talked a little bit about this where you had to keep coming back, and it, sometimes it takes a little while to get these new thoughts really ingrained in us. So if anybody's ever moved to a new city or a new house in the same city, and I've done this a couple times where we've just, moved houses and you're on autopilot. Maybe it's just like, 10 blocks away from your old house. So you're driving from the store and you're going to your new house, and all of a sudden you end up at your old house, right? And you're like, wait a second, how did I get here? It's because you're on autopilot, which can be a really good thing, except when it comes to our thoughts, because literally we have our neurons that are wired, and those thoughts that we have are wired in these neurons, and we just keep, they're kind of like entrenched. We keep building them bigger and bigger. And so it takes a while to redirect those thoughts and build new neurons or new pathways for those to be continuing on or go to. I hope that makes sense, you guys. And so that's why it's important that we write it down, or that we keep evaluating or thinking those things thoughts, is because that's going to be helping us to, again, make those the new autopilot. And pretty soon you're going to notice that that thought or that limiting belief that you were struggling with, you're no longer struggling with that limiting belief. So this was just that traffic circumstance, or something that's totally neutral. So there could be traffic, and a thought could be triggered that says, well, I'm going to look bad when I'm late. And that's going to trigger feelings of like frustration or upset. And your action is that you're going to be short-tempered, you're going to be apologetic when you get into your meeting, and even when you're sitting there in your car, you're just like running through all those like, I'm feeling really upset. And your result is that you might look bad, right? You come in, and because you're all, oh, sorry, and all of this stuff, you really don't look very professional. On the flip side, there's still that circumstance of traffic. Your thought could be, you know what, everything's going to work out the way that it should work out. So you're just calm, you have that assurance for yourself. When you come in, you're really confident, your energy's high, and you're not feeling rattled. And here's the really key thing, you guys, is that the reaction here, or the result, is really not about other people. It's really about you for a lot of this. Even other people could be, offended or upset, and yet you can still be calm and be like, it's okay. Things worked out the way that they needed to, and you feel that calmness and that energy with that. So time is on my side. I love it. Amy's mantra of time is on my side. So for me, this has been really powerful. If there's a specific thought or limiting belief that comes up for you, I would love for you to take a second and write that down. So we're going to just take a second. I'm going to go back to my screen share, actually. And I want you to pick out a thought, or it could be a feeling or result or circumstance in your business that you want to just kind of get curious about and evaluate for a second. And if you've got a piece of paper handy, you're just going to write CTFAR. And you're just going to go through this really quick. So you'll pick whatever it is, and you can work from that. So maybe it's a feeling that you're having. If you're feeling worried about something, I want you to think, what is that feeling causing me for action? And what's the result? And what thoughts are triggering that feeling? And what's the circumstance? All right, you guys. I don't know if anyone is brave enough or has something that they want to share. I know we're right on time right now.
I want to share.
Okay, Isla, let's hear.
Yeah. So I have a customer, Lacey. I have a customer who's not responding to my texts about how she's doing with the oils and setting up a wish list appointment, but she would respond to other texts like social stuff. She's
okay, so that's the circumstance is that she doesn't respond to oil texts.
Yeah, and my thought is that I'm bugging her too much. Like I'm bothering her. And the feeling that comes with this is that, of course, I'm worried. I'm like, okay, does she hate me now? Like, she's never going to talk to me again.
So that's more thoughts, right?
Well, I'm worried.
Okay, so that's more.
Is that a thought
you're worried.
Still?
Yeah, you could have like that worried feeling or like, oh, yep.
Or maybe I'm frustrated. That's a feeling. And then the A, or the lack of A.
So this is really good, really quick. Feelings are usually one word. Like frustrated, angry.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So that might help people figure out, like, is this a thought or a feeling that I'm having? So.
And so the action or lack of action that results from this is that I don't really reach out to her as much as I should. Like I'm not texting her, bring up a wish list appointment as much as I should.
Okay.
And the result is that I haven't had a wish list appointment with her.
Okay. So, and I think that a lot of us would have those same kind of thoughts, feelings, action, and reaction to that circumstance. So I think that's totally normal. And I think, is this something, Isla, that you want to change? Do you want to have a different result or different feelings or thoughts around this?
Yes, I still definitely want a wish list appointment with her, or at least get some kind of response from her, not just like ignoring my oil related texts.
Okay.
Like it's her birthday today and I wished her happy birthday and she texted me back. And just like a couple of days ago, I texted about the oils. Nothing. It's been like that about the oils.
Okay. All right. So we kind of go back to, okay, the thought that could be creating that. So we can make up a new thought around this besides I'm bugging her about the oils. What are some different thoughts? I'd love to hear from you guys if anyone wants to unmute or if you have, or if you want to type in the chat. What's a different thought that Isla could try out with this?
I was thinking that you could easily say something like she has been too busy to think about essential oils. She's had lots of time to be able to say thank you for wishing me happy birthday or social stuff, but she hasn't had enough time to think about the oils. She knows it's going to take some time. So what if it was just that she just hasn't taken the time? So it's nothing personal to you at all. It's just she needs time.
I love that. I love that new thought. Isla, how does that new thought feel to you?
I know she's busy. And one of the things I'm thinking about is that, yeah, maybe she hasn't really tried the oils yet, and so she doesn't know how to respond to my texts.
Yeah, so maybe she's almost like feeling guilty or like, oh, I haven't even used those yet. Right? So maybe the thoughts could say that you try on her like, I wonder what she's really feeling or what she's really thinking. Because I know she was excited to use these, So I wonder what's coming up for her now. And the other thought is, whenever I'm struggling to follow up with people, I think, well, it's my job, so I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do the best job that I can at it. Like, it's my job. And I told them I was going to do that, so I'm going to do that. Like, I'm going to keep showing up because I told them I was going to show up, and I was going to be their person if they needed help with oils. So I don't know if that shifts at all for you, Isla.
No, I like that this is part of my job. And maybe I can include that in my text next time. Hey, this is part of what I do. I don't want to keep on bugging you, but I just want to make sure that you're using the oils that you spent a lot of money on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think so as your thought changes, the worry kind of dissipates and you can say, okay, it's my job, so I've got a little more motivation to do this. And so your actions could be different. I would even suggest maybe pick up the phone and say, you could leave a voicemail or a different kind of message that way. And just say, hey, I don't want to bug you, girl, but I know I didn't get a chance to do their wellness consult, and I want to make sure I do that for everybody. Amy, did you have a thought?
I was going to say leave bugging out of it, because that's a negative word, because you're attaching bugging to a negative in your mind. So even take that out, just reaching out to her and say, I'm reaching out to you as a part of my job. Just something that sounds natural for you, but take out the bugging part. But keep that positive of I'm doing my job, because that's for you, that's a good feeling, because that makes you feel like you're accomplishing that part of your follow-up. But the bugging part is like an insecurity, and it's a negative feeling within you. So I would eliminate the bugging altogether, and write it down and continue to say that through text message and through, so it just comes out naturally now, and you're just taking out those negative words. I don't know. That's my thought.
Oh, I think that's a great thought. Thank you so much, Amy. Thank you. And I think you're going to have a different, even if her reaction is the exact same, do you see how you can have a different result? Isla, with your result is, oh, we haven't had a wish list, but you're also having more feelings of oh, then I'm frustrated about that, and all those different things, right? They keep coming up with that. And so your result can continue to shift, and you don't have to feel, I think your result that you're also having here might be I'm feeling like I haven't done as much follow-up as I should have been doing, and you'll have known that you did your very best in that follow-up. Does that make sense? So.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
All right. I love that. All right. I'm going to end for tonight, but if there's other things that come up for you guys for next, I would love to continue this conversation if we want to talk about it a little bit more next week. If there were some circumstances or thoughts or feelings, actions, results, and if you are looking throughout this next upcoming week, I want you to be looking through this and thinking about it, okay, what's coming up? Get curious for yourselves and figure out what are the feelings that keep popping up, or the thoughts behind those feelings. Really, we want to be looking at. Okay, checking the. Right.